Hello everyone, I'm Mentom64.
I'm the Flameclaw.
And I am X-Gamer Richie.
And welcome to the HellfireComms long-awaited playthrough of Pokémon Colosseum. This one's kind of been on the back burner for, almost as long as HFC's been a thing, really. I've had, people on and off ask me for it, and I don't know why we put it off. I guess it just didn't feel like the right time. Also, Power Region, GameCube games, not a very good combination for capture cards, but luckily Flame stepped up to the plate and did the recording thingamabob, so we're all good. So, Pokémon Colosseum, it's essentially a watered-down version of the handheld RPGs. It's set in the Desertus Orre region, which I believe is actually based on the American state or whatever of Arizona. So, it was Unova before Unova was a thing. And we play Wes, who is a former member of Team Snagem. Try and guess what they do for a living.
I reckon they run a legitimate business. I don't know about you.
Yeah. The shady stuff is just a front for the real philanthropic gestures and such. But this game was developed by Genius Sorority, who were basically founded to make console-level Pokemon games. Unfortunately, they don't seem to have made a game since Pokemon Shuffle in 2015. They did that one Wii game, Dragon Quest Swords, the Mask Queen, and the Tower of Mirrors. But as for Colosseum itself, we seem to have a Sonic Adventure 2 kind of problem here, in that, Flame, you're a big fan of the game, aren't you?
Yeah, I will say that this game is one of them games that's kind of, some people love it to pieces, some people just really don't care for it much. I'm of the kind that I really like this game for what it is. Though we'll say over time it does have some quite glaring issues.
Yes, it does. And what about you, Richie? I know you've beaten the game, but how do you feel about it?
I do have really fond memories of this game. I'm sure watching it back, I'm going to remember certain things that I was not so much a fan of. But I think it was just such a different experience in the realm of Pokemon that it was just really quite exciting to play at the time.
Yeah.
And there are some amazing characters in here. And there's a really great sense of style that I really like. I have a lot of fond memories about Colosseum.
Well, I'm going to take the far end of the spectrum and say I've never really cared for Colosseum. In fact, I was kind of let down when I finally got a console-level Pokemon game, and it turned out to not be Pokemon as I wanted it to be. There's no wild Pokemon in the game. The only Pokemon you can even catch are known as Shadow Pokémon, more of which later. They did kind of up the wild Pokémon factor in the sequel, but we're not probably going to be covering that because I have no nostalgia for XD Gale of Darkness Championship Edition, etc, etc. But I want to try and give Colosseum a bit more of a fair shake this time around, because I've honestly actually never even beaten this without cheats, because I got bored and I was like, I just want to see how the story ends, so I'll put it in, because it's not really a very hard game. There's not even that much grinding and whatnot, but we'll see how Wes fares with his journey. So how are we starting things here, Flame?
Okay, so as we saw in that hilariously decent cutscene at the start, we've just basically blown up the premises of our former employers, Team Snagem, and their legitimate business has gone down in flames. Now we're out here in the outskirts stand. Basically this is pretty much an exposition dump, really. Everyone's telling us what our character already knows. He's got his Espeon and Umbreon with him on that cool bike thing that he's got, which I will say, best Pokemon you could possibly start with. I'd say they're my two favourite evolutions off the bat.
I like Umbreon, but Espeon is pretty decent as well. It's kind of weird that you start with a Psychic and a Dark type, right off the bat, and we get a battle as well within the first 5 minutes, which has got to be a first for a Pokemon game, besides the original generation.
Yeah, I'd agree. This is pretty gosh darn quick for there to be a Pokemon battle in a Pokemon game. But also, can I just say, Evolution guy right here, currently wearing an Evolution shirt.
Oh, nice.
That couldn't have worked out better. But yeah, the Espeon and Umbreon, one of my favourite bits of the game. Largely because the Espeon and Umbreon that I got from my Colosseum run stayed with me for many years and many Pokemon games. I believe it was Eddie the Espeon, and Darklight, the Umbreon, and yeah, just loved them to pieces.
Beautiful, beautiful. So, how are we actually going to be like building our team and whatnot, Flame, if there's no wild Pokemon?
Well, that's something that we will see more when we get into actual story, because there is like a story tied into the Shadow Pokemon that you mentioned, and we may have our own ways to acquire those Pokemon, given our skills on our CV, so to say.
Yes,
but
indeed.
the first thing you'll notice off the bat here that was a big distinction at the time, it's quite different to even modern games now, but back in Gen 3 this was kind of a big deal. The fact that every battle in this game is a double battle. So no longer are you having the send one guy out, rotate, whatever. Now you've got two Pokemon on the field, which might not sound like the biggest change, but it actually completely changes the dynamic of battle, because you've got the extra elements. Not so much when you just got your overpowered Pokemon beating up two pitiful little Zigzagoon, but when you actually get into serious battles, you have to consider the strategies that you want to use, bearing in mind there's two Pokemon on the field, including a friendly who some moves can also hurt.
Like Earthquake.
So, you know, it reinvents battling in itself, which does kind of slow down the gaming points, which was one of the previously mentioned problems I have with the game, but it also means you have to think a little bit more, so double-edged sword, really, I'd say.
It's kind of weird that, for one, I never really considered this a Generation 3 tile, but it is. It released after Ruby and Sapphire, but before Emerald, I think?
Yeah, I believe Emerald was the last major release in Gen 3, because they had Ruby and Sapphire, then Fire and Leaf Green came out after this, and then I think Emerald came out revised a bit later.
Yeah.
And this game's release was actually quite prominent to the clusterfuck that was trying to complete the National Dex in Gen 3.
Yes, it was.
If you wanted to get all 386 Pokemon, you couldn't do it with just like a single game in the series, or even a single pair of games.
No.
Because you would have to play through one of the Hoenn games at least to get the Hoenn Pokemon, and obviously trading over between those to fill in the blanks in the Hoenn Dex, and then get the Gen 1 and some Gen 2 Pokemon from Fire and Leaf Green, and then this game, the Pokemon you can catch are kind of filling in the blanks in the Pokédex. It was a right clusterfuck.
Yeah, it really was.
Also, there was a special bonus for actually buying Colosseum, in which you could get the Pokemon Jirachi, which is like the wish-granting Mew and Celebi, essentially. And I don't know why this guy is sending out two Whismers. Like, it's kind of pathetic, honestly, but bad guys don't have very good taste in Pokemon, this is known.
Well, I mean, it makes a change from the usual Zubat, Grimer. You know, I can't fault them for changing things up a little bit, and that's actually one of the strengths in this game, the fact that the enemy teams are a lot more varied than they would be in a conventional Pokemon game.
Yeah, I suppose that helps alleviate the boredom and the repetition somewhat.
It does, and it just makes like fighting all the guys like that little bit more interesting on the whole, because like although they have their character classes, it's not flat out indicative of what Pokemon they're gonna have. So you don't have the obvious like Team Rocket guy, he's got a Zubat, Fishman guy, he's got a Magikarp. It just like it keeps you on your toes a little bit more.
And I mean, I think the other thing that is a particular highlight of the game is that the key villains, as I'm just going to dub them for now because obviously we haven't met any of them.
Yeah.
They're all really, really diverse in terms of their look and also their teams. And I mean, those sort of key villains end up being your sort of gym leader boss battles throughout the game. And I mean, one of them in particular is just an absolute highlight, and is the reason that that character then went on to appear in XD Gales of Darkness, because he was very much a fan favourite in this game for all the right reasons.
Yeah, he's very meme-worthy, and I will say, one of Colosseum's strength is that it has kept its identity. There's not really been many, like, rip-offs of its style today. I guess the closest you could come to is like Sun and Moon's more expansive world for the most part, and all the ride Pokemon and whatnot, but they haven't really come close to trying to like recreate Orre and whatnot, mostly because, you know, it's a desertous region, and most regions will just have one like desert area and whatnot.
Yeah, I think the other thing is that ultimately, Colosseum is sort of very much on the edgy side of the Pokemon spectrum, because obviously you're dealing with a lead character who was previously part of an evil team.
Yes.
You spend the entire game stealing other people's Pokemon, and that's obviously all delightful. And just in general, the entire feel of the game is a lot murkier. Like, you've got these grungier soundtracks throughout all of the levels. You've got loads of sort of underground areas. I mean, one of the areas is called the Underground.
Wow.
And you've also got, I
Or
believe,
the Under.
Pyrite. Yeah, I believe there's Pyrite Town as well, and that's also quite grungy. And so, really, it just comes across as being a bit of an oddball, really, in the entire Pokemon franchise, because it's the only one that I would say goes towards that darker, edgier tone. And I do appreciate it for that, because it's just fascinating to experience a game that is more in line with a sort of darker, edgier tone from a franchise that has been so kid-friendly for such a long time.
And I think it's important to note the distinction that it wears its edginess on its sleeve. It's not like the Mystery Dungeon games, which on their surface are bright and colourful, all about like
Yes.
Pokemon friends, mingling and whatnot. But like you peel away the layers and there's like PTSD, anxiety, depression, death, etc. So like Mystery Dungeon, a very deceitful series in terms of tone and whatnot.
Oh, I wouldn't say deceitful, because it's very sincere, and it does lay its card on the table. I think it's a series that most people, when they initially look at it, think, oh yeah, and then anybody who has actually played it knows that they are actually some of the best stories in the entirety of Pokemon. Like, even if you don't necessarily like the gameplay of the Mystery Dungeon games, they are all really worth playing, because I'd say they're pretty much every single Mystery Dungeon game that I have played has made me just like an absolute emotional mess by the end of it, and any game that can do that is always good in my books.
Oh my god, it's fucking Riku from Kingdom Hearts 1.
Now, this guy doesn't look at all conspicuous or anything, does he? He's just another civilian just passing by for a chat.
Okay, well, let's completely put him out of mind and forget him. Who's this companion we've picked up? Rui?
Rui is our partner in this game, and what we know of her so far is she was kidnapped by them guys who we fought on the way into Phoenix City. And they wanted her for a reason, which I believe they're actually going to get into in this conversation with the mayor right now.
Okay. Kind of funny, her design puts me in mind of Misty, which I'm wondering whether like that was intentional or not. Either way, I'm going to call her like Double Misty, Dusty for short.
Or you could call her name, one of the two, but...
Right, you chose her name. I wasn't privy to that. I didn't give consent.
Well, no, but her kind of canon name is Rui, just like the guy's canon name is Wes, which is actually sort of an odd one, because obviously Wes is very much a westernised type name, because it's got like Wesley and stuff. But Rui's very Japanese. I feel, anyway.
You'll notice there's a bit of a trend with the character names in that they become more and more complex and unusual by Western standards and hard to pronounce in points, to the point where sometimes it does seem like they've just mashed buttons on the keyboard because they don't line up with names from any country that I'm aware of.
Yeah, I mean, obviously that guy that we just met outside, I believe that his name is Nascor, which is just like, what the hell is that?
Sounds delicious, really, but we're in Phoenix City right now, and if you think that sounds similar to Phoenix, Arizona, you would be right.
I hadn't even clocked onto that, but yeah. I'll say, like, this game's areas, like, Phoenix City is a bit of an outlier, because it legitimately looks like a nice place to be. The other areas in the game, like even the outskirts stand that we saw at the very start, it's like worlds apart from this.
Well, here's some info for you. Fennec was founded when the first mayor of the town, Mayor SK's grandfather, drew water into the city, as mentioned by a resident in-game. Phoenix was founded when a man by the name of Jack Swilling had a series of canals built to bring water into the area. These canals followed an ancient Native American canal system, and the communities that sprung up along them were built on top of ruins of the same people. Eventually, the city came to be known as Phoenix, as it was a city born from the ruins of a former civilization.
Ah. That's quite cool. I mean, the other cool thing is it's one of the things that is mostly known for all of the cities in Orre is that everything's based on minerals.
Mm-hmm.
So Fenac City is based on phenakite. In pretty much all languages apart from Italian and I believe Spanish. Italian, it's called Diamantopoli, which is from Diamante, which is diamond, and Spanish it's called the Ciudad Oasis, which is just from Oasis in general, which is basically what this is.
It's the water area. That's what we can take away from it in a way that I understand.
More specifically, it's the Oasis area, and it's a very nice looking oasis as well. I mean, why would you live in any other area in Orre? Oh my god, it's these twats again.
I know, it's Team Snagem, because they snag 'em.
I preferred it when Team Rocket and Team Skull did it.
These guys, like, their designs, it's honestly kind of, I'm not sure what to make of them, because half of me thinks, okay, they seem like normal generic thugs. The other time, like, I look at them and they just seem like really cartoony, exaggerated, out of place in this particular world.
A little bit, yeah.
Yeah, I think it's those sort of... I'm assuming they're headphones that they've got on them. It might just be hair, and they're all bald and, like, got that kind of hideous hair around the back of their head. But I'm pretty sure they're meant to be, like, sort of headphoney type dealios, but it just makes them look ridiculous.
Ah, so we stole the snag machine. I'm assuming that's what lets Team Snagem, well, previously capture people's Pokemon.
Yeah, that's the equipment they use to convert regular Pokeballs into snag balls, as we see on screen right now. And that, it seems a bit of a contrived reason for them to be after us, given, like, you would think a Pokeball's a Pokeball and it wouldn't know intelligently that it's someone else's, but hey, it works for this plot, so we'll take it.
Well, the snag machine must, I don't know, rewrite its code and make it essentially a Master Ball and whatnot.
Well, no, because it can still break out of it.
Huh.
It just... It's like, given the usual Pokemon games, it's programmed that it won't let you capture a Pokemon that belongs to somebody else. This basically just overwrites that, and I just find it bizarre that that works in universe.
Yeah, a little bit. This music reminds me of, like, Mega Man Legends or the Misadventures of the Trombone, I gotta say.
I'm not overly familiar with those soundtracks, but I will say this game's soundtrack, as well as XD, it's fucking fantastic. It's like arguably among my favourites in the series, maybe tied with Gen 2 and Gen 6.
That's some mighty praise.
It's got an entirely different direction to both the classic games, obviously, because they were, you know, bit games, and also like the direction of music from the anime. It's like entirely its own thing.
Yeah, and I think that's what helps even further differentiate Colosseum from all the other Pokemon games. And it's really cool because it's got like a real... In some places it's like a real jazz theme going on. You've got like lots of clicking going on. That's mostly like the overworld type music. But then you've got these battles which are like very much more... I don't quite know, they're sort of rocky in a way.
Bouncy, perhaps?
Yeah. It's difficult to say exactly what is the difference, but I think part of it is instrumentation, and there is just a general different feel to the whole thing, and it works, and I love it.
Okay, I guess the other two could have fought you, but they only brought 2 Pokemon that day.
They were scared. They saw the other guy get beaten up and thought, fuck this, I'm out.
Fuck that noise, he's got 2 SP evolutions.
Basically, yeah. And like you've seen from the battles so far in this part, that Espeon is kind of OP at the moment, so you don't want to fuck with it.
I mean, really, of the 2 evolutions you've got, Espeon is definitely the one that is the most useful. Like, as much as I love the Umbreons, Espeons are technically better because they have better move pool, they can cause a lot more damage, and it's just because at this point in time, Dark type wasn't really all that effective. Like, generally I think pretty much most of the Dark moves are like physical moves, and I believe I can't remember exactly what Umbreon's stats are, but it doesn't quite align as it perhaps should do, and that does just make it come off as the weaker of the 2, but it's still damn awesome.
Yeah, I love Umbreon for the design more than his actual use, whereas Espeon, his Confusing attack will win like everything for the first half of the game. So, when we're balancing them up like that, that's kind of how it falls for me.
Yeah, usually I would go for aesthetic and whatnot, but, usability trumps aesthetic every time. You were told to buy Pokeballs, Mr. Man, not come here and waste your money on, medicine and whatnot.
Hey, I'm showing off the things you can buy, and more specifically the things you can't buy, because none of the major shops in this region seem to have Pokeballs, which makes sense given there's no wild Pokemon about. But someone's bound to have them, as we're being told.
Let's see, where could they be? Outskirts Stand, the place we just were. Very good, very good. Well, folks, that was part 1 of Pokémon Colosseum. Depending on when this goes up, there should be a new part every weekday, so keep coming back, and we'll still be here, I guess. Never ending, never ceasing, always talking, never stopping. See you next time for more Pokémon Colosseum. Bye for now.